I was excited to try Halo Combat Evolved again when it came out on Steam in April. I had played it once before and I remember liking it, but I was ready to judge it again with my older, more opinionated eyes. Unfortunately, they didn't like what they saw. Played it through just a little over halfway before going back to let it die.
Woohoo! Yeah!
I was pretty disappointed. I didn't know exactly what it was, but for some reason, Halo CE felt really bog standard. About a month later, Doom Eternal released. I played it to completion 3 times. I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. The game's real fun. It got me thinking, I used to like Halo when I was younger. Why don't I like it now? What's Doom doing that Halo isn't? When I thought about it, I realized while Doom wasn't the first shooter, it was really the game that popularized shooters as a genre. So much so that before the FPS genre really got its official name, people just called all the games Doom clones. Doom's conventions were used as the mold for FPS games for years, until Halo and other console shooters made modifications to those conventions so they'd work better on a gamepad. My problem is I hate everything they did. That's why I think I like Doom so much more. It's not like Doom Eternal abandons every innovation made to shooters since Doom 2. I mean, you can look up and down. That's new. What Eternal does do is look way more to older shooter conventions for its mechanics and structure. I think way more games need to do this, since those mechanics and conventions are way more fun than the console shooter ones. It's a totally subjective viewpoint, and you're entitled to disagree with me, obviously. I'm entitled to your pancreas if you do. Also, for a shooter, Halo wasn't the first attempt at a console shooter. It's also not necessarily the origin of all the stuff I hate and I'm whining about. However, Halo really is the game that solidified the model, which makes it kind of the face where the conventions are going to whinge about. This isn't really supposed to be a Doom is better than Halo video. I do think that, but I'm more saying that games that take more from Doom than Halo are betterer and funnerer. So I'm not saying Halo's Cannonball was bad, I'm saying the splash got pee-pee in my mouth. OG Doom and Doom clones typically have the player regain lost health by finding healing items in the environment. This promotes exploring the environment. New Doom has that, plus a system pretty similar to MGR's Zandatsu, where when you perform a finisher on an enemy, you get health back. This rewards aggression during combat, and also taking risks. Halo has a regenerating shield that, regenerates after you've avoided damage for a little bit of time. This promotes running away from combat and hiding every 10 seconds. It sucks, and I hate it. Halo's shield is kind of understood to be where the trip with health regen and FPS has kind of started. Combat Evolved does have a separate health bar you restore with found kits, but they'd get rid of that in the later games, and most shooters just use the regen-only system, which blows. I'd prefer any active healing system over regenerating health. It somehow feels like you're simultaneously being tasked with the boring chore of locating a closet to hide in, and also just waiting on a timer. A timer you have no influence on. Health regen's in a ridiculous amount of games. I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of the most common mechanics in video games. Luckily, more recently, it's often implemented as more of a complement to a more fun active healing system. Like Far Cry 5, which has slow regenerating health, which forces you to use medkits if you really get into a bind. Unfortunately, the Halo 2 model is also still alive and well, and it sucks. Anything else, please. It doesn't have to be the crazy thing from Eternal and MGR. Please stop using the regen only. It's so boring. Pickups, consumables, recharging ability that heals you. Anything's better than having to hide and do nothing. Doom's pretty fast. By comparison, Halo's, you know...
Chief? Chief, can you hear me? At last. Are you alright? Can you move?
No thanks.
It's okay, Rocky. You go when you feel like.
Console shooters in general have a pretty sluggish base movement speed. But Halo's unique in that, unlike other console shooters, it doesn't even have a sprint. Sprint in Halo's kind of a controversial subject. People say it ruins the level pacing, and it makes Halo too much like other shooters. I think both those concerns are actually valid. Totally valid. But to throw on top of that, I also think the standard video game sprint sucks and is boring. First-person shooter games have 2 main components, moving and shooting. With the standard sprint, it feels like you have to choose between moving fast and shooting since they don't let you do both at the same time. Running typically puts your gun down, on top of getting rid of your ability to sidestep, which kills your maneuverability and ability to dodge shots. It feels like games assume we're troggies who wear diapers and seatbelts when we play games, and if we were able to go fast and shoot at the same time, it'd just be too much for our little hearts. I I wouldn't mind if sprint was just a go fast button. They didn't stop your ability to shoot, kinda like Half-Life 2's, or the OG Dooms even. I think Eternal is a solution that works better for Halo and should be in way more shooters too. It's simple, no sprint button. Just make the base movement speed pretty quick. Not like crazy fast. Take like the Halo one, increase it by 10%, maybe 20, but then give the player some sort of an active evade, like a roll or a sidestep. Not every game necessarily needs Doom's super fast recharging double dash, but a little sidestep or a roll would be pretty fun and fitting in pretty much any shooter I could think of. Kinda related, in Halo Reach, Bungie finally cucked and added a sprint as the default armor ability. It's about as boring as it is in every other FPS game. What makes me sad is that there's actually an evade armor ability that lets you do a roll, but it's only used in rare instances and only in the multiplayer. It's not in the campaign at all. It mirrors the dodge that the enemies can do, which would have been nice to have in the campaign since it's always felt unfair that Covenant can dodge but you can't. Along with that, jumping after the evade would usually launch you in the air, which was fun as hell. It wasn't quite as fun as like rocket jumping, but it was miles better than sprinting. It limits your options way too heavily, and it makes you get into situations where you wish you had a gun that was a 5-minute walk back that you should have been able to carry with you anyway. Also, if you look at the third CE mission, where you're given a sniper rifle at the start, you can really see how overly limiting the 2-weapon limit is. Since you're given this nice power weapon that does big damage and has limited ammo, you don't want to shoot it all over the place, but you also don't want to drop it, because it'll come in handy whenever you want to pop an elite. That effectively means you only have one active weapon slot you really want to swap around, and you end up feeling pretty limited for the entire mission. This limitation feels like it's there for no real reason. You don't necessarily have to have the hyperspace arsenals of Doom or Half-Life, but having like 4 or even 3 weapon slots would feel far more flexible. Please kill this cancer. It's in everything and it's awful. There's a lot of ways to do bosses in shooter games. You can do the shoot them till they die, puzzle meme fights, hitting weird weak points randomly distributed around a giant monster. No matter what, the only wrong answer is not having bosses. Boss fights are great at putting a face and character to the opposition and bookending sections of games. There's a reason they're often the most memorable parts of games.
Nanomachine, son!
I don't think it's necessarily Halo's fault, but around the time the console shooters really took off, it feels like shooters just stopped having boss fights, which is really lame. New Doom likes to swap between the shoot it until it dies model and goofy gimmick fights. Both approaches work and are fun. It really doesn't matter, just have boss fights or your game is cringe. Like, make them good, of course, but going from none to some is a big jump. I don't know how coherent this was, but anyway, Eternal really made me think. And what I thought about was the altercations Halo made to shooters really slowed everything down and made it stinky. This was all done in service to make it work well on gamepads, since consoles were huge and the FPS genre was really interesting to most people, but PC ownership was kind of a massive barrier to entry. It's like if you built an amusement park in a place that was only populated by midgets, and they wanted to ride your big roller coaster, but they can't because, you know, they're too short. So you build a kiddie roller coaster, and then everyone loves the kiddie roller coaster, despite it being baby version of the big roller coaster. But then now I got the big legs. I want big roller coaster. And it feels like we're still using baby roller coasters for everything. Everything's a baby roller coaster. Do big roller coaster. Go fast. Go.